Hello and welcome to the first SunVox tutorial in this series. Today we're going to download SunVox and make our first song. So what we need to do is go ahead and click on the link in the description to warmplace.ru/soft/sunvox, and you'll be greeted with this page. Should look really similar to this. Maybe the version might be a little different, but other than that, it should look basically the same. As you can see, we have SunVox, latest release, and we can download it with this link right here. Go ahead and click Download SunVox for Windows, Mac, Linux, and Windows CE. That'll download SunVox for any of those operating systems. So we click that, and I've already downloaded it, but just for the sake of the tutorial, I'll re-download it and re-extract it. Alright, now that it's done downloading, let's go ahead and extract it. We'll open it up. Now I'm just going to drag this onto my desktop. And you've downloaded SunVox, and now all you have to do to run it is open up the folder, go to SunVox, and each folder applies to a operating system here. So I've got Linux, different Linux versions, Mac, Windows CE, and Windows right here, Windows 64-bit. That is the version of Windows I'm running, so I'm going to go ahead and open that folder. And here's SunVox. Double click to open it. Now, in certain cases, at least on Windows, when you first open SunVox, it might give you like a warning. Windows might give you like a warning, and pretty much you just have to press like more options and then click run anyways. And after that, it should open, and you should be greeted with something that looks similar, not the same, because I've changed some things, my settings in SunVox, but similar to this. Alright, so now that you've opened SunVox, we're going to create our first song. Now the first thing we're going to do is click on this little button in the top left corner right here, and click New Project, and then click Empty. Okay, so I'm going to just explain a couple things before we get started. This center window is called the module view, and this is where we can place all of our instruments. This top window is called the pattern editor. This is where we edit our patterns and can place notes into them. The bottom is our timeline and patterns. So as you can see, we've got a pattern right here. Kind of has it has a randomly generated little pixel art on it. So every new pattern you make will have a different random looking artwork onto it. You can double click to create a new pattern, and you can select them by clicking, and you can just click and drag them to move them around. To delete them, we can just select one, press delete, and click remove selected patterns, click yes. And there we go. So those are the three windows of SunVox. Now, this top place, the pattern editor, might look a little confusing to you if you are coming from a different music software. And that's because SunVox uses a tracker style pattern system, whereas other DAWs use more of like a piano roll style patterns system. It's just something a little different. There's no drawbacks to it really, other than it might be a little less user-friendly is all. But once you get used to it, you should have no issues with using it. So, the first thing we're going to do is create an instrument. And we can do that in several ways. We can right-click and click New Module, or we can click on this little button over here, this 3 bars, and click New Module. Or we can just double click, which is, I find, the easiest. So we can double click, and as you can see, there's a bunch of options for a new module. We can also click this load button to load any samples we might have, or custom modules. But we're not going to do that today. We're just going to bring in a generator. This is under synths, and it should be the 4th synth down. Click OK, and we have a generator module. Now this generator creates a triangle wave, which is a really basic sounding synth, and we're going to use it in our song. So, in SunVox, if we want instruments to, or synths or modules to be able to make any sound, we have to route them to the output. And the way we do that is we can hold Shift and click and drag like this. Click and drag, put your mouse over the output and let off on the click. So release the click when your mouse is over that. And as you can see now, it's connected to the output and it will make sound. We can use our mouse up here to click on these little keys to make sound. So you've just created your first instrument. But we're going to change the parameters on this generator a little bit for this song. So the first thing we want to do is come down to release. Now attack and release are very similar. I'll show you what they do. So release, if we click and drag, we can change the release. Change your release to 90 or 1680. And what that will do is when we let off the note, it'll kind of fade away. It'll release. The more we give it, the more time it takes to fade away. The less time. So we're going to keep ours at about 90. Should be good. Now the next thing we're going to change is the sustain down here. This is number 8 on the parameters. We're going to use this little button to turn it off. What sustain does is it makes it so if we keep holding a note down, it'll just keep going until we let off. And for this song, we don't want that. So we're going to turn it off. And now, no matter how long we hold it, it'll just do the release that we set it to. And there we go. So there's our first instrument. Now, if we want lower notes on this piano roll, there's these buttons over here, oct with a minus and a plus sign. That stands for octave, and we can go down the list like this. And here's the bottom note that we can use, and here's the very top note we can use. So, now that we have our first instrument, let's start adding some notes into the pattern. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this pattern we have down here, and we're going to change how long it is. Right here, number of lines, that's how long the pattern is. So we're going to click on 64, and that will change it to 64 lines instead of 32. Then we can click close and select this pattern, and we're going to add some notes into that pattern. So let's drag this down and come into our pattern editor, and this is where we can add our notes. Alright, so how we add a note into the pattern is pretty simple. We select here, see these white dots on this going downwards? These are where we can add notes, and there's 4 channels that we can add notes into this pattern. You can change the, they're actually called tracks. You can change the number of tracks in here, just like we changed the number of lines. Let's just leave it at what it is for now. We're not going to use these other tracks, but let's just not bother with changing it because we don't need to. So we can use our mouse to jump around the pattern like this, and we can use our scroll wheel to move up and down, or we can use the arrow keys. So that's how we navigate. Now to add notes, all we have to do is unlock this little lock up here, which prevents us from adding notes into the pattern. We unlock it, and then as you can see, there's a little cursor sort of thing under where we have selected, and we're going to add some notes. So, click on this module, make sure you have it selected, drag down, and we're going to click on C3. And that added a C3 into the pattern right where our mouse was. Now, we're going to go down to line number 4 and add another one. There we go. We've added 4 notes into our pattern. Now, we can play it and see what that sounds like using these play buttons down here. Go ahead and click on the play button that has a little P on it, and that will play just the pattern that we have selected. So as you can see, when we play it, a little line goes downward, and as it hits these notes that we've added in, it will trigger them. These little lines highlight the beats. So we've added a note every quarter beat to this pattern. These wider lines represent a measure. So we're going to change the note now on this measure, which changed to an F. So count up from C, 1, 2, 3, and now we're on F. And let's try adding it in. And oops, it didn't add it in, and that's because I relocked the pattern editing. So to go back into edit mode, we can either click this lock to unlock it, or what I like to use is the shortcut, which is space. So we can use space to switch it from edit mode to locked mode. So let's press space and go back to edit mode. And you can see the last note that we hit with our mouse is highlighted in green. But let's go ahead and add 4. Actually, we're going to add just 2 Fs. We'll add one there, go to the next beat, and add one there. Now let's add in a G. We'll add in 2 Gs on the next 2 beats right here. Make sure you have the most left part of this pattern editor selected. These other sections are for effects that we can do to each note. So we're just going to focus on the note, NN for note. Okay, so that's all the notes we have to add, but we want to fill out the rest of this pattern. So all we're going to do is click from the top left corner and drag down like that. And we can do Control C and click on line 32 and do Control V. Now we could also right click and use copy and paste in here, but it's easier to use those shortcuts, and I'm sure you're familiar with those. So now we have this full pattern filled up, and we can play it, and let's see what it sounds like. Down here, click the play button. And now what you have created is a very, very simple pattern, and it's called a 1-4-5 progression. And what that means, a 1-4-5, what that means is we went from C, which is the first tone of this scale, and then we went to the 4th tone, which is F, and then the 5th tone. It's a very common progression to use, So that's why I picked it. It's simple and effective. And there we go, we've created our first pattern. Now let's come down to here, the timeline, and let's select our pattern and let's copy it a couple times. But we're not going to use Control C and Control V because that would copy the pattern itself into a new pattern. Now it has the same notes as the old pattern, but when we modify this pattern, it won't modify this pattern, and we don't want that. So let's delete this. We're going to select this, right click, and click clone. And that makes a clone of this pattern. It just kind of extends it forward. We can also use Control D, and we'll make 3 clones like that, so we have 4 patterns here. When we modify this pattern, the darker one, as you can see these are a little bit grayed out, it will automatically modify these other patterns that are connected to it. So let's create a new instrument now. So let's go into our module view, and let's double click and select generator again and press OK. Now this generator, we're going to change how it sounds. The first parameter we're going to change is the volume. We want this, well actually let's change the second parameter first. The second parameter is waveform, and this changes how it sounds. We're going to change it from a triangle wave to a square wave. And as you can see, you can click and drag, or you can use these little arrows. And let's change it to a square wave. See how it's squarish like this? And you can see that it says square 2, which is the third wave on the generator. So let's go to the square wave. And square waves are actually really loud. So we're going to bring the volume down to 70. Now let's go ahead and connect it to the output so we can hear what it sounds like. Select it, hold Shift, click and drag, then release, like that. And now it's connected and we can hear what it sounds like. So as you can see, that's kind of a very chiptune-ish sound, a very 8-bit sound. And that's the kind of sound we're going for this song because it's very easy to do. So let's change just a few more things. We're going to turn sustain off as well on this one. And we're going to bring the release to 45. Or 40, somewhere around 40 should work. And there we go. There's another instrument that we can use. Let's create a melody for our song now. If you want, this is a good opportunity, if you're more experienced with music, to maybe create your own melody. You don't have to follow exactly what I do. If you are a beginner though, a beginner to music perhaps even, then I highly recommend following exactly what I do just so that you can get used to using SunVox. The next episode I'll be more general so you can use your own creativity, but I believe when you're first learning something, the easiest thing to do is just to copy what someone else is doing. So let's create a new pattern down here. We'll double click and let's make it 64 lines as well. So double click on the pattern again, go to number of lines, and we can select this and actually write in 64 if we want and press enter. Or we can just use these, which is faster and I prefer to use them. So let's just click on 64. Now let's select our second generator and let's add in our melody. Press space to enter edit mode. You know that you're in edit mode because the lock is unlocked. And we're going to add some notes in here. So let's add in a G5. How do you find a G5? Well, there's a C5 right here, and we can just go up from there. Let's click on the G, And we've added our first note. Now let's go down to line 12, which is the fourth beat of the measure. And let's add in an A. Now let's go to 16 and add in a G. Now we're going to add a little more faster rhythm to the melody. Let's go to line 24, which is the third beat. And let's add in a F. And then go to 26 and add in a E. 28 and add in a D. So those are some faster notes since they're closer together. Then on line 32, let's add in an E. Go down to line 44 next, add in another E, and the last note on line 48 is a G. So that's the melody I've created for this song. It's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and play it with the pattern button. Make sure you, well, obviously we've been editing it, so we have this pattern selected. And there you go. We've created a very, very basic song. Now, we can use the generator to make drums as well. Now, let's just use Control D to continue the pattern so we have a longer song. Like that. Now we're going to make one more module and do one more pattern, and then we'll be done with the song. And let's do a simple drums. Let's do some simple drums, 8-bit drums. The easiest way to do that is to make a new module, select generator again. Let's go ahead and connect it to the output using their shift click. And then let's change the waveform to the fourth waveform. It says 3, but it counts from 0. So the fourth waveform, which is noise. And noise, as you can probably figure out, just sounds like noise. Pretty bad sounding. But they're actually really good at doing drum sounds, percussion. All we have to do is turn off sustain and add a little bit of release, say about 20, or anything a little above or below 20 release. And let's try it out. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's do these higher notes first. And there you go. We've made a simple hi-hat. Let's try one of the lower notes. That could be a snare. And that bottom note, it could be a bass drum. So we're just going to do that. Let's make our drums. Maybe our drums don't come in right away. So let's go halfway over and create a new one. Make sure it's aligned on the lines like that. And let's create our drums. Select your drum module. Go into edit mode with space. And let's start off with the hi-hats. This is where we're going to use our other tracks or channels. As you can see, there's 4 of them. Each place has a place to input notes. And these lines separate them, these gray lines here. So let's just start on the first one, and let's add in our hi-hats. Let's do a C7. And we'll just add one in every quarter beat, every beat, I mean. Since this song is 4/4 timing, every line is a beat. So, let's try playing the pattern. That sounds pretty good. Let's continue our drum pattern. Let's go to the next line. Make sure you're on NN, notes. Go into edit mode. And let's do our bass drum. So let's do the lowest note we can find. Make sure to go all the way down on the octaves and click C0. And we'll do 1 on 0, 0, and then 1 on 16. Like that. Pretty good. Now let's do our snare in between that. So on 8 and on 24. That sounds pretty good. We'll go with there. Just pick one kind of in the middle here. Like that. Add one to 8 and 24. Now, I feel like that snare isn't quite, I feel like it's a little too high up. So what we can actually do is when we're in edit mode, we can select the number right beside the note. And we can just change that if we want to. So this is on octave 3. Maybe I want it lower, so let's change it to octave 2. We just select that, and we can press 2 here. Or we can use our keyboard and press 2, like that. And just like that, we've made our drum pattern. Now let's come up here and let's use our clone, Control D, and clone it a couple times. Now let's play through the whole song. To do that, we can press this play button that's next to the record button, and that will play the whole song from the beginning. And as you can see, when we're playing it inside of SunVox, it'll just repeat. Now, you've made your first song in SunVox. Congratulations. But it's just in SunVox, and there's a couple things we want to do before we can export it. And that is, the first thing, we probably should save our song. Click on this button in the top, and click Save Project. And you will be greeted with this. I have a custom folder named SunVox Projects, and I'm going to save this. Let's name it First Song, like that, and click OK. And now we've saved our song as a SunVox project. But say we want to send our song to our friends, or we want to use our song we made in our game or something. We need to turn this song into a WAV file. And SunVox actually can't export to MP3, but it can export to WAV files. So all we have to do is click Export, click Export to WAV, and we don't have to really worry about this. This is bit depth. We can change it from 16-bit to 32-bit, but it's a WAV file, so this doesn't really matter that much. We can just click Export. And as you can see, I've exported a lot of songs. You can navigate using these dotted buttons and these places to navigate what folder you want to do. This is my desktop. Let's go to Music, and we can save it. Let's save it to our desktop, actually. Let's export it to our desktop. Call it First Song. And then click OK, and it should export it really fast. Once it's done, you can close SunVox. It'll ask you if you want to exit. You can just press yes. And as you can see, our first song has been saved right here. We can play it. And there you go. You've made your first song in SunVox. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial. This will become a series where I explain how to use SunVox. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.